What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Canadian Football Fanatics off-season primer number 4 coming at you guys today. 4 down, 5 to go. Today we'll be talking some Edmonton Elks with host of the Turf District podcast, Andrew Hoskins. So excited to be joined by Andrew, but as always, joined by Blake. Blake, thanks for joining me this morning, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Yeah, it was a busy day coming up here later on, but glad to fit you in for a little bit.
Yeah, I know yesterday we were bummed that you couldn't make it work with Coach Phil talking some riders. Unfortunate for Coach had to push it back a little bit, but had a good chat with him. Was able to throw in a couple questions. I know you were looking forward to asking him. But as we said, today's all about the Edmonton Elks, who've been very busy this offseason, hiring a new president, general manager, head coach. Obviously, the news the other day of re-signing one Tre Ford, who I'm sure you are well aware I'm very happy about. But excited to kind of chat about the Edmonton Elks and their kind of new direction here moving forward with this new regime and new era. So I think without further ado, let's bring in the man himself, and that is Andrew, host of the Turf District podcast. Andrew, thanks for joining us this morning. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm always excited to talk football, although the last couple of seasons might indicate that I might not be as excited. But at this particular moment, I'm excited to talk about football.
Yes, a lot of good stuff happening. Um, I guess we can kind of maybe rewind a little bit. And I know you've chatted with the folks that you guys do the podcast with about kind of rewinding a few weeks back, and just kind of wanted to ask you about how you enjoyed your experience out west for Grey Cup 111.
Oh, it was awesome. We had a really, really good time. And I know for myself, it was, I found some really good balance between, the parties and just some relaxing visiting time with some of our football family, which was awesome. It was a really, really well put on party, and so we had a great time. I'm always excited to come to Vancouver, mind you. So so the more we can have them out there, though, I won't be upset about it. That's for sure.
Yes, glad you guys enjoyed yourselves. So let's talk about the Edmonton Elks, and they started off the offseason by kind of, I guess, the news of Chris Morris, former University of Alberta head coach, being named the president and CEO of the team. And I think that was pretty well received. Obviously, former Edmonton Elk, won 3 Grey Cups with the organization, and almost, and I wouldn't say almost, did turn around that U of A program here recently. Went to the Hardy Cup last year. Obviously, this year was a little bit of a disappointment, but I think really kind of got that organization headed in the right direction. And now he steps into this new role, as a former, alumni to the team, and I think was pretty well received in the fan base. What were your guys' kind of reactions with the news and when that happened?
Yeah, definitely excited about Chris Morris. It was definitely a name that came out of left field. I obviously we're very aware of Chris Morris as, like you said, the head coach of the Golden Bears and all of his work that he's done there and how he's improved that program. Uh, the biggest thing for me was that when the announcement came, I had a bunch of other names on my list, and Chris Morris wasn't on that list. And all of a sudden, you see the connection to the team, you see the connection to the city, you see the connection to both the past and the future, and the way that he has worked with some of these kids at U of A. And he's very, very passionate about the success of a team. And so I'm excited about that. I'm also excited about the fact that he comes in with a history of teaching, mentorship, leadership, and draft, like recruiting. And so, although I know the president doesn't do that part, I know that he can play that part when it's asked of him. And so I think that bodes really well for the success of the team as we go forward here. So yeah, definitely not upset about it. It was a shocker. It'll be his first time as president, so we'll see how that that plays out. We're good at getting first time people doing things, but Chris Morris is on the wall of honor, and putting him in as the president is a pretty cool move.
Yeah, and then Andrew, the Elks kind of went the opposite with their GM, someone they had before. In fact, he was GM of the team the last time the Double E, if you will, won the Grey Cup in 2015 in Ed Harvey. And then they kind of did a 180 again and hired a new first-time head coach out of your rivals from Calgary and Mark Killam. What were your thoughts on those two acquisitions for the Elks?
Well, I'll start with Ed in the fact that we started the podcast when Ed was GM last time, and I knew that Ed is one of those guys that it takes some time to earn his trust. He is uh, he can be a very introspective kind of guy, not super trusting of other people until he's shown that that's a possibility. And we kind of started to get to know him, and then he left Edmonton, and when that happened, um, uh, the that same year with the Grey Cup was in Ottawa, and I ran into Ed there, and we had a conversation that was probably an hour long with there was no guide anymore. It was just the gloves were off, and he was telling us everything, and it was I really gained a lot of respect for Ed at that time, and he has had a number of years to be in different roles, to get an opportunity to get more experience. And at his press conference introduction, he even acknowledged it. I've grown, I've learned, I know what is all. I know that this role is about more than just bringing the right players to the field. It's about marketing, and it is about bringing people in to tell our story. And we saw Ed when Hamilton was here, kind of mid-summerish, and he was saying to us at the time that he goes this. He goes, I know I'm wearing the other team's colors. He goes, but it hurts to see the stadium not full and to see the losing record. And he said, I would never want that for this franchise. And it was heartfelt. And so when he is brought back on, the passion again, the want to win, the knowledge of the past, the wanting to bring back the bone, the brotherhood of nasty elks, I guess we can say now. Wanting to bring that feel back to the locker room and making sure that these guys understand that the history is there, and now it's time to set a new legacy and be part of the greater history of the green and gold. So Ed is a great hire. He has a lot of connections. For the one thing he did really well when he was here was bring in receivers that could light the world on fire for on rookie contracts. So and he really built the offensive and defensive line, and that's how we got to that Grey Cup in 2015. So I'm excited to see what he does there, and obviously he's already starting to make some moves that we'll talk about shortly that are pretty pleasing for all the fans. Switching gears to Mark Killam, I don't know about you guys, but I was shocked when Mark Killam got let go from Calgary. It was always that he was the heir apparent, and it always seemed like it was just at some point Dave Dickinson was going to move on and Killam would move into head coach, just like when Huffnagel moved on, Dickinson moved into head coach, and we just kind of knew that was all going to happen. The one thing I will say is, yes, we're going back to somebody who hasn't had a head coaching position, but might as well have. He's 20 years in the league. It's not like it's brand new to him. So to me, that's a little better than going with the guy that's only been in the league, 3, 4, 5 years as a coordinator and now becoming a head coach. So I think the greatest thing about that, and he even said it himself, was the endorsement from the other players that have played for him. If you have somebody who can motivate people to run through a wall for you, it's just a huge place where people want to be. They want to be around a coach like that. That's what's happening in Montreal. People want to be around Jason Moss, right? People want to be around Mike O'Shea. And so I'm excited for Mark Killam to be able to bring that. I'll be curious to see what the rest of the staff looks like, and if there's some veteran support to help Mark Killam as well through the coaching side. But pretty excited about his energy and what he can bring as far as his expectations to the team.
So talking about Ed Harvey a little bit, was able to kind of watch the introductory press conference as well, and something that jumped out to me was that he seemed very passionate about the organization. But I think one thing that maybe a little bit too passionate. I know he talked about maybe getting in trouble a little bit about kind of being very honest and very was going to tell people the way that that he feels and kind of that open door policy within the organization as well. How do you guys feel about that? And just kind of, you talked about as well him learning from, his prior experiences, in the role and just kind of him growing as a general manager as well.
Yeah, I think one thing that Ed really did do, even when he was here before, was that the player was never there was never any doubt how Ed felt about the player. He was very clear. This is where you're at. This is what I think that is worth. Um, I'm gonna. I need you to do right by me, and I'll do right by you. And I think he does instill a lot of trust from the players, from the past players that I've spoken with. That was one thing that they always said about Ed Hervey, was that it was always very straightforward. There was never any guess of where you landed with him. So to me, that part is great. And him learning more throughout the years is only going to help that, right? It's only going to help how to have that connection. The other thing from that presser, though, was, and this was very, very unlike Ed, but there was that human side. He spoke about his mother passing away, and that is the part that people don't usually get into. That's the Ed Hervey inner sanctum. And to me, that shows that he is, as he said, I've matured. I'm open to understanding the bigger picture and understanding where everybody plays their role in it. And so I think that, yeah, he has learned. I think it'll be a good thing for the team. And I think it gives him, I think he was doing a good job before, but now he can do a good job on both sides, not just the player side, but the actual football ops side that helps, guys like us have a chance to ask him questions and figure out where things are going with the team. And I think he's a little more open to that. So I'm definitely excited about that side of him.
So,
Yeah,
sorry, Blake, before you go, buddy. Lastly, kind of about like the three pillars that are in place now with Chris Morris and Ed Harvey and Mark Killam. You mentioned kind of being, surprised or shocked about two of the three of them. But I think after, kind of hearing what they have to say and stuff like that, it's been a pretty good reception from the fan base and kind of that buying back in, as you mentioned about Head Harvey kind of being sad about, seeing the empty seats and whatnot in the stadium. How do you think the fan base is kind of reacting to the three guys that have been hired now to kind of, start to rebuild this foundation of this organization to hopefully into, better years ahead?
Well, I guess one thing is, if you're hiring a guy that was known as C Murder on Halloween to make sure that he runs the team well, there's some passion in there. Lots of people know that name. They know Chris Morris and what he does in the community and what he's done in the past. So I think there's an excitement there. Lots of people, when Ed Hervey left here, said he never should have left. And so there's a lot of energy and excitement about Ed Hervey being back and what he can do. Um, and I think Mark Killam is because of the way that he did his opening introduction, when he did his opening presser. I think there is that, okay, these three guys all have that same passion to succeed, and they all seem to be saying the right things to make it happen with the players. I guess that's one thing that I feel we've been missing in the club over the last little while, was that I don't know if it was, um, like, if there was that connection to the players to help them succeed, which helps the team succeed. I think there is a little bit different approaching those professional athletes now than what it was like, 30 years ago. So these guys seem to have that in mind and know how to do those connections. And I think that's going to go a long way. So the fan base is excited at this moment, even more excited after this past week. But I think as we get closer and as other moves are made, I feel like there's a lot of people who are signing back up to those season seats to be back and see an exciting team on the field.
yeah, and Andrew, we're now 15 minutes in, and we haven't talked about the arguably the biggest signing the Elks have made, signing your Canadian quarterback Tre Ford to a 3-year extension. Especially with that length of contract, you would have to believe that Tre is finally going to get that opportunity to be the number one quarterback that a lot of Elks fans, I think yourself included, have thought he's deserved for about the past 2 years now.
Okay, so well, I'll say two things on that. The first thing is, am I excited that Tre is back? 100%. Very, very excited for him to play. I think he's a dynamic player, and I'm excited to see what he can do when the offense is basically okay. We're going to design this offense around you, and this is how we're going to make it work. I think that Tre learned a lot from MBT last year about how to be a starter, how to be a leader, how to do that film prep, all of those types of things. The thing about Tre Ford is that to this particular moment, he still hasn't beaten one of the top 4 defenses in the league. So I am very excited for him to take that next step, that progression, and to stay healthy and to be able to get through a season. And I think he can do some very, very dynamic things that we're going to be excited to see. And if the rumors are true and Jordan Maximic is coming back to Edmonton to lead him, he does know how to run a kind of offense that would suit Tre Ford. And I think if they're able to give him that ability, I'm excited to see what he can do with it.
Yeah, obviously, I think it's probably no secret of a big fan of how big of a fan I am of Tre Ford, and I think just the frustrating part for me from an outside perspective is just the lack of obviously reps the last few years. If you kind of obviously it's a little bit different because he obviously has the scrambling aspect too. But if you look at just pure passing attempts dating back to his 2022, I think it's only just over 400. Guys like Dustin Crum in the last 2 years have had over 460 attempts. MBT, I think alone this year had like 460 attempts. So I think if he's able to get those reps finally and learn, I know we're in such a day and age where we want instant results and let this guy develop into what he truly has. I feel like instead of the expectations of he needs to win right away, which is fair. I understand that, especially where the organization is at right now. But if he could have had, dating back to 2022 when the Taylor Cornelius situation was going on, and could have took his lumps then, what he could have been, I feel like now is kind of my biggest gripe with the whole situation. And obviously, it's tough when you have a guy like MBT who's a great leader and a proven player in the CFL, proven Grey Cup champion. When he's available, I'm sure when you're Chris Jones, when your job's on the line, you're kind of tending to lean towards the guy that is maybe more consistent or maybe a little bit more proven right now. But I guess kind of where are you at in terms of, like, as you mentioned, it hasn't really beat a top 4 defense yet, where I think maybe I'm a little bit more higher. I think a lot of the CFL fans now are kind of maybe not the highest on Tre Ford as kind of when he first came in, and they're kind of almost waiting for him to keep so they can kind of be like, see, I told you he wasn't it. I see he told you he wasn't it. Where I feel like there's some people who are super high on him still and waiting for him to kind of get that opportunity where he's the guy. And I know it's still kind of TBD that they could obviously bring in a guy like Cody Fajardo or something like that to compete for the starting job as well. But how do you kind of process that as an Elks fan and kind of living in that fan base of like balancing expectations, but also like not winning right away, like isn't also like it's a tough balance, I guess, because you're kind of contradicting yourself. But how do you kind of balance that, I guess, Andrew?
Yeah, it's been really tough over the last few years because that's the thing is when you have a team that is losing and losing and losing and losing, setting records for futility as far as losing at home and all those types of things. The big thing is win now, right? We've got to win now. But with a guy who is super talented, but just doesn't have the experience at this level, it's really hard to just be like, okay, well, when he goes in and if you look at the game against Winnipeg after they won the back-to-backs against Calgary for the Labor Day and the team is on a high, Tre Ford comes in against Winnipeg and they get trashed like literally, like he just, but that's one of the things is that he hasn't had that much experience against those top defenses to learn how to do it. He doesn't even have film to be able to go back and go, how can I make this better? Like, at least out of that game he does have that, which was a good thing. But I think part of the issue was that the leadership here, since he joined the team, I agree with you, Cole, that it's when the whole Taylor Cornelius thing was going on, there's no way he shouldn't have seen the field more,
Yeah.
right? I didn't understand that. I remember, writing an article on it's, this is we are watching the definition of insanity, of putting out the same thing and expecting a different result. And he should have definitely played more then, no doubt about it, and take his lumps, like you said, but it never happened, right? Last year, you're really not like this past season, they bring in MBT, which at first I was like, oh no, like this is just going to push Tre away even more. But I looked at it as, and I said this a number of times, that, Mike Riley had Travis Lulay. Warren Moon had Tom Wilkinson. Matt Dunnigan had Warren Moon. Damon Allen had Matt Dunnigan. Tracy Ham had Damon Allen. Like, there was always that quarterback that had the experience to teach the next guy, yes, you have all the talent, but this is how you lead a team. And so I understood the idea behind MBT coming in to help with that. Now, did it work out? Nope. But do I think that MBT was able to help Tre learn? 100% I do. Yeah. You could see it throughout the season, even at practice. You could see Tre and MBT talking about learning new things and what can he do with this, and what about with this look? How does he change things? And I think the respect between the two of them was really, really good. But I think without the change in leadership and the ability for Ed Harvey and Mark Killam to talk to Tre Ford and say, look, this is what our plan is over the next 3 years, we're not talking about Tre Ford extending in Edmonton. I think that's the biggest thing. So he's now learned from that. He now knows what the vision is going forward. We all know he's an incredible marketing guy, and he happens to be a super dynamic player. And I think those lessons over the first 3 years could help him to exceed in the next 3.
And only
Yeah.
26 years old. Go ahead, Blake.
What's that?
Yeah, and
Only 26 years old as well.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Like coming into his prime. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
yeah, and Andrew, so we talked about Tre Ford. He was arguably the Elks' biggest priority on the season, at least free agent wise, getting signed. But someone that I think is probably priority 1A would be Geno Lewis. We know where Vernon Adams went to Calgary. We know how good of friends that Vernon Adams and Geno are, as well as William Stanback, who we hope, as BC Lions fans, we don't lose. What do you put the chances that the Elks bring back Geno Lewis in 2025?
Oh boy. I think at this moment I would say 60-40. 60 for him to stay, 40 for him to go. Reason for that is Geno's a special player. Geno does things that other receivers cannot do. And he is absolutely worth the bigger payday. I'm not sure if Ed is ready to give him the same payday that he had before. And so how important is that to Geno? How important is it to hear that vision from Killam, and at least knowing that the quarterback is going to be Tre Ford? What's the connection between those two, which seem to be pretty good, but not the same as Geno and VA, like we've already, like you just talked about, right? So I think there's going to be a lot for Geno to look at. I do think that if Geno isn't signed before free agency, he will be on another team. But I'm hoping that the combination of Chris, Ed, and Mark, and whoever they bring in to run that offense can maybe sway Geno to keep his 87 in green and gold, which would be I would really be happy to see at least that consistency come through.
So let's talk about the offense direction, kind of moving forward here, Andrew. I know it's not official, I believe, but I believe Forehand Logi's reported that they're pretty close to making a deal with obviously former offensive coordinator of the BC Lions, Jordan Maximic. Um, I know we're kind of speaking hypotheticals, but if he was to be, coming in and be the team's offensive coordinator alongside Tre Ford, I think, he has a kind of a track record of, working with Nathan Rourke, kind of turning him into who he was in 2022. The 2023 season with Vernon Adams was great as well. And then this year, had some ups and downs, but, to add another quarterback to his resume of, I kind of turned Tre Ford into the next level or showed him to his another level. How excited are you guys about that possibility of kind of the offense direction moving forward? With hopefully Tre Ford and Maximic working in tandem.
Yeah, very. Jordan Maximic was here before. I mean, he's a St. Albert kid. He's grown up with the green and gold, and he is a student of Jason Moss. And I think we can all say that Jason Moss knows how to run the offense. And Jordan Maximic has shown in the past, is it 5 years that he was with BC? I think.
Yeah,
That he
it'd be 5 years, 4 seasons, because it might have been the COVID kind of situation. Yeah.
fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I think that's about right. So he's shown that he can turn an offense around. And my biggest thing is that him coming back here means is I don't know what the communication and bond, I guess, is like between Killam, Maximic, and how they want to work together. But I'm excited to see what Jordan Maximic can do with a dynamic player like Tre Ford. He also has a dynamic, two dynamic runners in Javon Leake, and of course Rankin. So assuming we re-sign Javon Leake because he is also a free agent. But you've got some dynamic guys to work with to really increase the excitement level of that offense. So when we even look at some of the receivers that we are, like, if Geno stays, great. But guys like Zach Mathis that came in near the end of the year last year and has the wingspan of a plane, like, that's great to have for a receiver. We still have guys like Gavin Cobb is a free agent, but I'm guessing that he will probably end up back with the team. And then guys even like Kyran Moore that's going to be coming off of injury. Where is he going to be at? Is he going to be part of this group? So I can see a lot of excitement happening. But as I said, even when we were talking about Ed Harvey, if there's one thing I know he can do, he can find receivers. So yeah, it should be super dynamic, and I'm excited to see what Ed Harvey does also with the offensive line, and give Tre a little bit of time to think back there, because if you give that guy time and space, boy oh boy, that's going to be very exciting to watch.
Yes, it is. So, Andrew, you're mentioning about those free agents. I have
Mm-hmm.
the list right here on the screen for us. Maybe if we can go through the list of current free agents for the Edmonton Elks. If you could just maybe give us like kind of some of the names that maybe are some priority that you would like to see back. I know you mentioned a few of them there with some of the receivers and Geno Lewis. We mentioned of Javon Leake as well. But as we kind of have the list here, thanks to Three Down Nation, let me try to see if I can get that a little bigger. As we go
Perfect.
down the list, Andrew, maybe just it's a shorter list than I think probably the other 8 teams across the league, which is probably a good thing for the Elks. But if there's any names that are jumping out, Andrew, and maybe that you'd like to talk about, feel free, and I can maybe we can go back and forth.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking that like we already talked about 1 and 1A and Tre Ford and Geno Lewis. But right up there has got to be Niles Morgan. He's the leader of the defense at middle linebacker. He's been huge in the city as well as on the field. He, was tied for defensive tackles last year. Him and Anderson make a great tandem up the middle. And I think we need that linebacking core to stay strong. So I feel like Niles Morgan is definitely up there on the list of people we need to look at. The other one is Martez Ivy, who has been one of the most outstanding O-linemen in the league. Was kind of surprised actually last year that he wasn't given the nod in the West based on his play. So I would be excited to see Martez Ivy back on that offensive line. And then the last one that I'm going to mention is Oakman. Oakman came over mid-season last year, but had an immediate impact on that defensive line. He may not be a guy that can play every down, but the guy's a monster, and he's just disruptive. And we need guys that can be disruptive in the backfield. We were lacking that a little bit last year as far as like a hole on the defensive line. And so I can see a lot of, I want to give Armando Sewell some good pieces to work with. And Oakman is definitely one of those guys. I guess one other guy, and I should have said this beforehand, but pretty hard to go without Luchez Purifoy. He is covers that safety position everywhere, and he kind of took on a bit of a leadership role last year. So be happy to see Luchez back in Double E as well.
Blake, you got any questions, bud?
Yeah, just the one name that you didn't mention, Andrew, that I was kind of curious about. He came over from the other Green guys, Tevin Jones. I thought quietly he had a very good season for the Elks this past year.
Absolutely, he did, and Tevin is also a great guy, and I can see if the price is right, I see them bringing him back. One thing about him was that, especially when he first started, it's like he didn't drop a ball. Everything that came to him was connecting, right? So, Tevin Jones is a great ad. I would love for him to be back. I just wasn't sure where he falls in the list of priorities, especially when Ed Harvey is coming in and wanting to retool kind of everything to have some more balance everywhere. We had a great receiving core. We got to make sure they can get the ball and not have our quarterback lying on his back.
Yeah, I think another guy that was a quiet contributor as well is Hergy Mael, a Canadian receiver. Last year had some moments at times for them that was very meaningful contributions. But how do you think Ed kind of is going to plan to balance I don't believe the official numbers on the Tre Ford contract has come out quite yet, but I would imagine he'll get a little bit of a raise and kind of money will tighten up a little bit more, and balancing bringing in a guy like Geno Lewis might mean you have to lose a guy on the defense, or in that aspect, maybe you have to lose a guy like Javon Leake, or maybe you pay Javon Leake and lose Geno Lewis and vice versa. How do you think that balance will kind of take place this offseason?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I think that I think we have to wait and see who else is on the staff, because whoever is on the staff, they're going to know their own guys too. So as an example, if Jordan Maximic is coming, well, maybe there's some guys in BC that are free agents that are like, hey, I want to play with under Jordan again. So there might be some connection there, and that then Jordan is going to Ed and saying, I can see where this can help here. And then that'll happen, right? If the rumors are true and JC Sherritt is coming over as the DC, well, is he going to want to have some of those rider guys that were successful for him coming over? And are they going to want to? I don't know. So I think until you know the full staff, it's really kind of hard to say, well, I can see where they might save some money here and spend some more money here. But if I had to take a wide guess, I would say that Ed's probably going to put some money into the defensive line. He'll put a little bit of money into the offensive line. The offensive line did reasonably well last year. They just need to make sure that they continue to grow as a group. But I can see him putting a little bit of money in that side. And then I can see him putting, like I said, a little more money into the linebacking core when you're talking Niles Morgan, because I think that Morgan Anderson tandem can't be broken up. But who are they going to put in at Sam? Are they thinking of bringing back a veteran like Moncrief, or are they thinking of putting somebody else in there? So I think there's going to be a little bit of hot potato as far as where that all goes. But if I had to guess, I'm thinking that the lines will get some attention up front.
Blake, I'm not gonna lie. I don't like the sounds of I believe Mark first, now Andrew mentioning trying to get their hands on some of those BC offensive playmakers. I like them to stay in BC and in the orange and black, if we're being honest. But Andrew, last couple questions before we get you out of here. You mentioned JC Sheraton. I mentioned him earlier. Of we know it's not official yet, but another kind of the theme here is the Alberta guys of kind of coming back to contribute for the Elks now. What are the feelings of that hire? And I think a lot of fans would probably be excited when they saw JC Sherritt returning to the Elks.
Absolutely. JC, leader on and off the field. We knew he would be great as a coach. Went down to the States, had success there. Was able to come up, and obviously was a big part of helping that Saskatchewan defense be as good as it was last year. Yeah, very excited for JC to come back home. And I think he is too. I think he wanted to be back here, right? And so as much as it's some people were saying it's like, oh, they're just getting the band back together and bringing in it's like the boys on the bus when you're talking about the Oilers. But I think these are guys that have experience and have success at other levels where it's time for them to move forward. It's not just, hey, this is a name that we're bringing in. It is, these are guys that can contribute to making this team better. So very, very excited to see JC back if that is the case. I think if JC's back, it's pretty much a lock that Almondo stays as the D line coach, which is outstanding. Probably means that we might even see Odell in some type of role, which I wouldn't be upset about. Those guys have all continued to learn and kind of perfect their craft in making other people play as well as they could. And so very excited about that side of things, and hopefully they can bring that together.
Blake, any final questions for Andrew before we get out of here?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything that there is to cover with the Elks so far this off season.
Yeah, so
Yes.
far I think it's going to be busy still, so we'll still have lots to chat about as the off season goes on.
Yes. So as you mentioned, a lot of chatter to still be had here as the offseason will continue. How excited are you just for this new regime, Andrew? Obviously, as you mentioned, kind of the dark cloud hanging over the organization here for the last number of years. And now it really feels like, the fan base is excited. The organization is really motivated to kind of turn things around. And as I mentioned, the kind of hometown flavor with all the Alberta guys. I feel like this is a really good time for that Elks organization right now.
Well, I think it's setting up for what could be a very good spot for the Elks. So
Let's speak it into the universe.
that's right. Yes, exactly. I think I'm a little bit like my good friend Kayla on this one, in that I am excited on these guys being in there. I am excited about their passion, and I'm excited that they're saying all the right things up front. But I'm going to reserve my over the top excitement until training camp and I can see what they can do and see who do they bring in, who wants to be part of this. Does it turn everything around for next year? Maybe, but I mean, the team took some good steps this year. They do have some pieces. They were getting there. They had the number one offense. Like like that. They're very good on that side of things. So, but how much does that change when we start to tinker, and who knows? But I know Ed Harvey will get the team where we want it to be. I just don't want to go all guns a blazing that I'm super excited and then get let down again because we've done that for a few years. So I'll hold a little bit of reservation on that until I see training camp, but I am excited about the people who are in place.
Cautiously optimistic. Let's go with that one for now.
Correct.
But Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. Let the people know where they can find all your work at the Turf District and 3 Down as well, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, guys, for having me on, because I love what you guys do, and I'm glad that we can all connect and do these crossovers. It's fantastic, and obviously great to see you guys in Vancouver a few weeks ago. So that was really cool. The Turf District, we are in our little bit of our winter break now. We'll be back in January, and we usually shoot live on Tuesday nights on YouTube and Twitch. You can join us on there and add your comments comments in. But of course, the podcast, the audio version comes out a day later on all of your different podcast networks if you just search up the Turf District. And then as far as 3 Down is concerned, I write the post game stuff for the Elks, so that will restart again when we get into preseason next year, unless there's some, there might still be some big stories to cover here, and maybe we'll have a little bit out there in the meantime to talk about where I think this is all headed.
Yes. Well, once again, Andrew, thank you so much for your time, and happy holidays. Hopefully, we'll talk again in the new year.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Merry
Andrew.
Christmas, gents. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, of course. That was one Andrew Hoskins, host of the Turf District podcast. So, just super thankful for all our guests that have joined us so far here in the offseason primer, Blake. It's been a ton of fun. I know you missed out on primer number 3. But excited to continue this offseason primer. We'll have one Darren Bombing on hopefully later in the week, and then start to knock down the Eastern Division after that, buddy. So, you know, it is the off season, but we don't stop over here at the Canadian Football Fanatics. Obviously, the weekly show is still on a little bit of a break for the winter at least. But any final thoughts before I know you got a busy day planned ahead? 2 birthday parties, man. Do I feel for you? You're gonna be one tired dad here tonight.
Yeah, no. Yeah, just kind of like I said at the end of the Stampeders primer, it's really interesting already that I guess, 3 weeks today was the Grey Cup game in Vancouver. And it's just like there's been so much news, so much movement already that you really have, especially the Western Division. The Eastern Division, there hasn't been a ton of news just yet, but especially the Western Division, it feels like the places could change literally daily if you were to predict the 2025 season today and then again tomorrow and so on and so forth.
Yeah, man. The off season hasn't even officially really begun quite yet. Free agency still has
Exactly.
to be kind of start as well. The draft, etc. All the new players that could be signed. I was mentioning with Coach last primer of we got Christian Covington, I believe, in like May. A month out from the
Mm-hmm.
season where you're gonna get guys that are cut from the NFL. Running out of opportunities in the NFL, and they come to the CFL looking for future opportunities. So the off season is still young, but still yet a lot of talk to be had. So. Blake, you go enjoy the rest of your day. I will spend my afternoon cheering on the Canucks and Bills for you, or at least the Canucks, I guess. And I'll put on a little
No, no,
bit of
no. Cheer on the Bills too. I need a big fantasy day from
oh
Josh Allen.
and I guess you're kind of the NFC West as well. I'm playing
Yep.
the LA
Yep.
Rams, so that could help you out even more, buddy. So that'll do it, I guess, for off-season primer number 4. Edmonton Elks. If you guys enjoyed, a like, comment, subscribe. Smash the subscribe button for Blake and I. Comment down below though if you guys enjoyed having Andrew on. Andrew's been on the channel, I believe, a number of times. I know
He
definitely back
has,
in the
yeah.
draft last year, the mock draft, which we're excited to hopefully do again, 2.0. And then we'll definitely have Andrew on again, maybe in the springtime once we hear some signings. Who knows what could happen? Maybe they land Justin McInnes and Geno Lewis, and what the heck is going on? But hope you guys enjoyed off-season primer with the Edmonton Elks. That'll be it for Cole and Blake on this off-season primer. We'll see you guys on the next one.